Welcome to the fourth part. I'm gonna show you how to make the lobby to the very first map when you start the game, so you directly can connect with other players. Fitting to that, we create a button to leave the party if a player joined another lobby, and the host can start a match and trigger a server travel. Let's start with the server travel, and the first step I want to show you for it should be the loading screen. So let's open the lobby UI, and here we're gonna add a border to the canvas panel and making it here in the anchors here to fill, and offset right and bottom to 0, so it fills completely. Then changing the Z order to something very high because it should be always atop, I would say. So we can set it, for example, to 99 or so. Then I'm changing the brush color a bit and adding a blur effect to it. Make sure it's here filled. You can add a bit of blur. And then maybe additionally a text centered that just informs the player that's currently loading. Then click on the border again, and we rename this here to border underscore loading screen, and make sure that is variable is ticked so we can use it now in the graph. In the graph, we create a new function. We call it show loading screen. And here now we are taking the border underscore loading screen, get that, and just say set visibility to visible. And by default, so if we start playing, we don't want to see the loading screen. So select here the border loading screen and make sure the visibility is by default to add collapsed. Then you could also like click here on the little eye to hide it if you want to work in here without seeing it in the editor. So that's only for editor view. Then we go to the lobby player controller, where we are creating a new custom event that should trigger once the server is starting the server travel. So I'm creating here a new custom event and calling this start match, or like one start match is maybe more fitting. And this should be run on only client. So if you set an event here in the player controller on run on only client, that means that the server can execute this event and it will run on this player here that owns this player controller. So, and here we are now getting the lobby UI ref and saying show loading screen. And maybe we can also say that we have like inputs here for pressing R to toggling our ready status or so. Maybe we can also say for that one, or just inputs in general that we may have. Once the loading screen is shown, then it will in any case move us to the new map. And then we also want to disable the input of this player controller. So for example, like this key input here. And here for the player controller, we're just cutting the self because we are already here in the player controller. Then we go to the game mode, to the lobby game mode. And here we are creating a new function, calling this start match. And here we are now searching for server travel. And for the URL, you need to choose the map. So I have here in my maps folder a gameplay map. and I will just take that. It's not so relevant for this tutorial which map this is. This is basically just a new map with a new game mode and a new player controller and a character. So yeah, basically we're copying this map name and pasting it here in the URL. Then we are getting the PCs array, and here with for each loop we are now casting to the lobby PC. And there we want to execute the start match event that we created in the lobby PC here. And yeah, basically how I set this is here is run on only client, and because the game mode here is only running on a server, it then executes here this event that is then run on only client. If this event would not be set to run on only client, then this would mean that this would still be executed on the server. But we want to have this executed on each client. And yeah, that's in general the way how you communicate with from the game mode with the single clients, with all players. And next we are going to the lobby UI and want to make this start match button working. So we click on the start match button on clicked event, and here we want to check, or here we want to, because like the start match button is only actually interactable for the server anyways, so we don't need to make here a check if the server is clicking this. And here we are now getting the game mode, casting to the lobby game mode, and there we now want to trigger the start match function. And now let's test it. So we're going in here with two players listen server, and setting both to ready. On the left you can see the server, and we're gonna press start match now. You see on both the loading screen, and both players are now successfully joined and server traveled to the new gameplay map. Actually, that there is a friend list in the center, that's from this friend list tutorial. Doesn't matter for this tutorial, so ignore it here at this point. But we can play now in this gameplay map. And basically the next thing I want to show you, you don't have to do, because as it is right now, I would say it's already a really good base. We're having this lobby, so you could have, for example, a main menu, and there you could press then something like play, joining this lobby menu here, or joining this lobby map here, and from there you can invite friends and then play together. And if you disconnect, you going back to main menu, so that's totally fine, and I would say a good base. But at the very beginning of the series, I also mentioned that I want to show you at the end of the series something like making it like in Fortnite, so that right from your main menu you can invite your friends and then play together. And we didn't set this up in this project, so the following thing you can do, but yeah, like you want, like what you prefer. So to do that, we first what we want to do is creating a new map, new level, and calling this startup. Then going to edit project settings, maps and modes, and make sure on the game default map we have here startup. And that's basically a map when we start the game. So when I package the game now and start it, then this is the map where we first go in. Or if a player gets kicked from a session, then the player would also land in this startup map. And this startup map will visually actually be completely, there will be nothing in there except a bit of blueprint nodes. And yeah, I will explain you how this works in a bit. So going here, open the startup map. And here we choose for the game mode, just search for game mode and using the default game mode. So not the game mode that you have like lobby GM or whatever, just choose the default game mode, because then we are sure if we play in here, or like if it will be shown at the very beginning, that this is really activating the default pawn and we don't see anything else, any characters. So that's really empty. So select here, just game mode, and then open the level blueprint. And we only need the event we can play. And what we say here is get player controller, then destroy session. Actually, when searching from here, destroy session, we have this one here with the word context. We don't want that, so delete that. And without dragging from here, just right click here and search for destroy session. Then connect this here with the player controller. And on success and on failure, first of all, here we are now casting to our game instance, or cast to the game instance. When we're going back to the project settings, the game instance that you have selected here as your default game instance. If you don't have a game instance yet, no problem. Then just create one here, blueprint class, search here for game instance. And yeah, you can take this, but I recommend you using the advanced friends game instance, because only choosing this you would be able to accept friend invitations, and that's very important for this lobby system. So yeah, choosing this one. And then you cast to this game instance. So if you created it, make sure to select it here, very important. And then you cast to this game instance, get here the game instance, just get game instance. And in there, I'm now triggering an event, create session. And this one you probably also don't have, or if you watched my tutorial about creating sessions, then you could have this. But if you don't have this, then you need to create such an event. I will just quickly show it to you because it's a very simple event. So this is now here in the game instance, just a custom event that I called create session. And then here the create advanced session node. Basically, I just search here for create advanced session. And all these values are the default ones, so I didn't change anything here. Then going here on success, make sure going on success, open level by object reference, taking here for the level, the lobby level, take absolute, set this in true if it's not already, and options, type in here, listen, exactly like this. So, yeah, then we can close the game instance because we don't need it anymore. And in the startup map here, on success, we're doing this, and on failure. So now to the explanation why we're choosing the startup map for that. And yeah, that has the reason that when we first start the game and would go directly starting in the lobby, then we could not make directly the lobby to, or like the map where we are first into a session. So this map is kind of like a session handler. So it's just there to actually create a new session and as fast as possible when we start the game, sending us to the lobby in an active session so we can invite friends in there. And now here, why are we using the destroy session? And that has the reason once a player disconnects or getting kicked from a server or from the active session, then it thinks, or the system still thinks, that the player is in the session. And if a player is self in a session, it's not able to create a new session. And by that, we're just making sure to destroy the active session. And even if there is no active, if this player is not in a session, we will just go through the on failure. But if it was in a session, then we did the necessary step and destroyed it, and it goes here on success. And either way, the player is then able to create a session. And the last thing I want to tell you about this one, or with this startup map thing here, is that you cannot test it in editor. If you test it in your editor window or standalone game, it both won't behave the way how it will be in the end in the packaged game. And if you actually execute the game on different PCs, and there this system, like it is right now, should work. One player is creating a session. When you start a game, the other player is also starting the game, is in a session, accepting then, or one player is inviting the other player, then is moving its own lobby and joining the other lobby, and so on. And yeah, just wanted to let you know. Then one small addition to that, I would add here small delay. We can leave it at 0.2 seconds. Connect the on success and on failure here with the delay until completed. Then we're casting to the game instance and creating the session, just to ensure another time that when creating the session, that it really thinks that the session is destroyed. The next thing I want to show you is what if you as a player decide to leave the lobby. So if you don't want to be anymore in the lobby because you want to host yourself, invite other players yourself, and for that we can integrate a button to leave the lobby. So going here to the lobby UI, and I will duplicate here this button. Actually, why did I write here toggling ready? I prefer if it's like maybe toggle ready. But yeah, anyhow, duplicate this button here, or one of these buttons, and going here, and calling this button leave party, and here the text leave party. The padding, it's a bit off here. I'm sure you can fix it, that it looks a bit better. And yeah, so going here, if this button here is clicked, then first of all, I think it makes sense to show the loading screen that we have already created. Then search here for open level by object reference and select here the startup map. Because by that, in the startup map, the session will be destroyed and also the player moves out of this lobby map. And right now the leave button is visible for all players, but we don't want to have it visible for the host, because the host can kick other players in his own lobby and yeah, should not leave the party or leave the session. So we set this here by default to collapsed, and going to the graph here on event construct, we have already this is server check, and now we're going on the false pin here, getting the button for here leave party or leave lobby, and also triggering here. Set this here to visibility visible. And if we now test it, you can see here, the host doesn't have this leave party button, but the client has, or all other clients would have it. And you can click it here. And now you can see the client left and joined on his own lobby, created and hosted an own lobby here. And yeah, now we have 2 hosts here. And of course, because I want to show the whole result of this tutorial, quickly demonstrate you the server travel again. So if both players are ready, we can start a match, and then on both you can see the loading screen, and both are now in the gameplay map where they can play together. Okay, that was the last part of this series, but don't worry, with this lobby system we now have a good base, and in the future I'll create new tutorials that you can integrate in this lobby system, such as a character selection or chat system, and I hope I was able to help you. See you on the next tutorials.